Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into something that's been part of human culture for, well, practically forever: beer.
Absolutely. It's fascinating how it's touched almost every aspect of civilization.
Yeah, and we're drawing on this really great article from the Urban Herald that maps out its incredible journey. So, our mission today really is to explore how beer went from this possibly accidental ancient discovery
Right.
all the way to this super innovative, diverse scene we're seeing today and looking towards tomorrow. We want to pull out the key bits of knowledge.
Find those connections.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. Where do we even start? It goes back so far.
Well, that's the thing. Its origins are, probably lost to prehistory
Yeah.
before writing.
Wow. So
Yeah.
humans were brewing before they were even writing things down.
It seems like it. The main theory, the one the article highlights, is that happy accident idea.
Right, the green porridge thing.
Yeah, exactly. Someone
Yeah.
leaves some grain, maybe it gets wet, wild yeast gets in there.
Yeah.
It's everywhere, after all.
Yeah.
Fermentation starts.
Bubbles appear.
Someone brave tries it and discovers, hey, this isn't just interesting. It might actually be safer than the water nearby.
Which back then was a huge deal.
A massive deal. Sanitation wasn't exactly modern standard, so fermented or boiled liquids were often the way to go. And we see hints of this super early on archaeologically.
Like where?
The article mentions evidence of basic fermented drinks in China, going back maybe 7,000 BCE, and pottery from Iran, over 5,000 years old, with chemical traces of barley beer.
So it was happening independently in different places.
It looks that way, early ingenuity, you
Right.
know? But for the first real, beer culture, the source points to Mesopotamia, Sumeria.
Ah, the Sumerians. They were serious about their beer, weren't they?
Oh, absolutely central. Not just a drink. They literally wrote hymns about it.
A hymn to beer.
Yeah, the hymn to Ninkasi. She was their goddess of brewing. It's basically the oldest recipe we have,
Hmm.
but, framed as this sacred text. Tells you how important it was.
So more than just kicking back with a cold one, how fundamental are we talking?
Foundational, really. It was used as currency. People got paid in beer rations.
Imagine getting your paycheck in beer.
Right. And it was food, too. A major source of calories, especially for laborers. Plus, it was this huge social lubricant, a bonding agent for rituals, gatherings, everyday life.
And who was doing the brewing back then?
Interestingly, the article stresses it was mainly women, often priestesses, actually, which gave them a significant economic and social role.
Wow. And the beer itself, it wasn't like what we drink today.
Oh, not at all. Think thick, porridge-like,
Yeah.
lots of solids floating around.
So how did they drink it?
Through straws. Long reed straws, basically, to filter out the chunks. Very different experience.
Okay, so Sumeria is key. Then it spreads. What about ancient Egypt?
Definitely central there, too. Beer, they called it HQT, was a staple for pretty much everyone. Pharaohs, pyramid builders.
The pyramid builders were paid in beer too.
Yep, just like in Sumeria. Seems to have been a standard way to keep the workforce going.
There's that pattern again. It's clearly valuable stuff.
Immensely. It was nutritious, sometimes sweetened with dates, and yeah, it could definitely be intoxicating. Their method was a bit different, too.
Oh, so
They often used a special kind of bread, crumbled it up in water, and let that ferment.
fermented bread water. Sounds interesting.
Shows that regional adaptation.
Right.
Right. And again, brewing was largely done by women in Egypt. It was everywhere religious offerings. Medical texts prescribed it.
Medical texts.
Yeah, and myths, too. The god Osiris was said to have taught humans how to brew. He was just woven into the fabric of society. Cultural, economic, social, even maybe medicinal.
So looking at Sumeria and Egypt, it feels like beer wasn't just something people drank after they settled down. Maybe it helped cause them to settle down.
That's a really fascinating point the article touches on. How beer links to the Neolithic Revolution. Think about it. You need reliable grain supplies for bread and beer.
Right, incentivizes farming.
Exactly. And brewing gives you this dense, storable calorie source. It gives people reason to gather, to stay put. It provides a safer way to hydrate. It wasn't just a beverage. It helped structure those early complex societies. You need organization, surplus, trade.
That's a much bigger role than I think most people realize. Okay, let's jump forward. The classical world, Greece, Rome. Beer doesn't seem to have the same status there.
No, it definitely took a backseat. Where grapes grew well, wine became the sophisticated drink,
Yeah.
the drink of the elites.
So beer was seen as...
Kind of rustic,
Yeah.
foreign, those barbarians
Yeah.
up north drink, fit for the lower classes.
Yeah.
It definitely persisted where grapes were scarce, Northern Europe especially, but it lost that prestige.
But then Rome falls and things shift again in Europe.
Big time. Beer makes a major comeback. And the early medieval period, brewing largely goes back to the household level, done by women, mostly the alewives.
Alewives, I like that term.
Yeah, brewing for the family, maybe selling a bit extra to the neighbors, standard practice.
And this medieval ale, it tasted different. There were no hops yet, or not widely used.
Right, that's the key difference. Before hops, they used grute,
Groot. What was that?
a mix of herbs and spices. Whatever was local, really bog myrtle, yarrow, heather, juniper, things like that. Added for flavor and maybe some preservation, though not as effective as hops.
So the taste would have been earthy, herbal.
Probably very different, complex, maybe a bit medicinal sometimes. Definitely not the clean bitterness we associate with hops.
It's like an acquired taste. But then the game changes again with the monasteries.
Yes, the monks. They become these incredible centers for brewing knowledge and, crucially, innovation.
Why monks?
Well, they brewed for themselves, partly as sustenance, especially during fasting. They had the resources, the land, the time, and importantly, the discipline for record-keeping and experimentation. They needed consistency.
And their big breakthrough was?
Hops. Definitely hops. They weren't the first to know about them, but monks really systematized their use in brewing.
And hops weren't just about flavor, right?
That's the crucial part. Hops added bitterness, sure, balanced the malt sweetness,
Yeah.
but they also have antimicrobial properties. They acted as a preservative.
Ah, so the beer lasted longer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Significantly longer. This meant it could be stored, it could be transported further. It basically enabled beer to become a traded commodity on a larger scale.
So the monks weren't just making better beer, they were making beer that could travel.
Precisely. Their whole approach, the quality control, the record keeping it, really laid the groundwork for, the brewing guilds and regulations that came later. It's like they were applying scholarly methods to brewing.
Preserving brewing knowledge like ancient texts. That's fascinating. Okay, so moving past the medieval period into the Renaissance and early modern times, brewing moves out of the home and monastery.
Yeah, you see the rise of actual commercial breweries, especially in growing towns and cities. Demand goes up, and professional brewers step in to meet it.
And this is where we start seeing more distinct regional styles really take hold.
Totally. Traditions start solidifying. You get the paler ales becoming popular in England, those wheat beers in Bavaria, darker styles like porters, and then stouts emerging in Ireland and London.
What allowed for that? Better techniques.
Partly, yeah. Improvements in things like killing malt, controlling the heat better, meant you could make lighter-colored malts, and thus paler beers. Better fermentation vessels, more consistency overall. It allowed brewers to specialize.
And speaking of controlling things, here's where it gets really interesting. That German law, the Reinheitsgebot.
The famous purity law of 1516 in Bavaria, yes. It's iconic.
What did it actually say? Just water, barley, hops?
Initially, yes. Water, barley, hops. Yeast wasn't understood then, so it wasn't mentioned until much, much later when Pasteur figured things out.
And why? Was it just about making pure quality beer?
That was definitely part of it. Stopping brewers from using cheaper or potentially harmful adjuncts or flavorings. But there was a big economic angle, too.
Oh, like what?
By restricting brewers to barley, it kept wheat and rye primarily for bread making. Helped keep bread prices stable, which was, pretty important for social order.
So food security was as much a driver as beer quality.
Pretty much.
Uh-huh.
And while you could argue it maybe slowed down certain types of brewing innovation in Germany for centuries compared to, say, Belgium, its impact on German brewing identity and influencing quality standards worldwide is undeniable.
Okay, so we've got regional styles, early regulations, then boom, the Industrial Revolution. That must have changed everything for beer.
Oh, fundamentally. It turned beer from mostly local stuff into a potential global commodity. Steam power drove mills, pumped.
That made everything faster, bigger scale.
Exactly. Then you get automated bottling lines, railways connecting everything, and suddenly you could make vast amounts of beer and ship it pretty much anywhere.
But it wasn't just machines, right? The science caught up too.
Absolutely critical. The huge leap forward was Louis Pasteur's work in the mid-1800s.
Pasteurization, obviously, but what else?
He actually figured out what fermentation was, that it wasn't just some chemical reaction, but living yeasts doing the work.
Understanding the biology of it.
Totally. And that understanding, plus pasteurization to kill off spoilage microbes, allowed brewers to take control. It shifted brewing from this, slightly mysterious art.
Into a predictable industrial process.
Precisely. Manage the yeast, prevent spoilage, produce consistent, safe beer on a massive scale. Then came pure yeast strains. Brewers could pick the exact flavor profile they wanted. It was a revolution. art becomes science.
That shift is massive. And around the same time, this specific style of beer just explodes in popularity.
Lager really becomes the defining beer of the industrial age. Its rise depended on two things: those bottom fermenting yeast strains that like cooler temperatures, and the invention of artificial refrigeration.
Refrigeration was key.
Absolutely. It meant brewers could maintain those cool fermentation temperatures year-round reliably. Before that, lager brewing was often seasonal or restricted to places with cold caves.
And people liked the taste.
They loved it. That crisp, clean profile, the stability, the longer shelf life. It was perfect for mass production, mass distribution, and the tastes of people moving into cities. The big lager breweries founded then. They're the ancestors of today's global giants.
So the 19th century ends with beer being this huge industrial product dominated by lager, but the 20th century, that brought some bumps in the road.
Major bumps. You had prohibition in the U.S., which just decimated the industry there. 2 world wars disrupted production, ingredients, everything in Europe and beyond.
And what was the effect of all that turmoil?
Massive consolidation. Fewer, bigger breweries survived and came to dominate, and often their focus shifted towards, well, lighter, more standardized lagers, trying to appeal to the broadest possible market, offend the fewest palates.
Which sounds like the perfect setup for a backlash.
Exactly. That's where the craft beer movement really kicks off, maybe starting in the 70s and 80s, gaining steam later. It was like this grassroots rebellion.
Against what? The blandness?
Yeah, pretty much. Against the perceived homogeneity of industrial beer. People started craving flavor again, variety, something different. A connection to the brewer, maybe?
Where did they get the inspiration? Old styles?
Partly, yeah. Looking back at traditional British ales, German wheat beers, Belgian styles, but also just pure experimentation. Small, independent brewers started playing with everything. Tons of different hops, specialty malts, weird yeast strains, even wild fermentation.
So not just copying the past, but innovating too.
Definitely. Resurrecting forgotten styles, but also inventing completely new ones like the American IPA. It redefined beer, really.
Yeah.
It showed it could be this canvas for creativity, for local flavor.
Which brings us more or less up to today. And the beer world now seems incredibly varied.
Oh, unbelievably diverse. The article calls it a world of styles.
Yeah.
And that feels right. The craft influence has gone global. It's not just the US and UK anymore. You see amazing craft breweries in Germany, Belgium, Italy, Brazil, Japan, everywhere.
And the market is still growing strong. What are the numbers like?
Pretty impressive. The global craft beer market was pegged at over $142 billion in 2024. And projections, nearly $330 billion by 2033. That's growing at almost 9% a year.
Wow. Where's the biggest market?
Europe still leads, the article says, over 38% share. But North America, Asia Pacific, they're growing really fast too.
And what's driving that? Still the flavor hunt.
That's a big part of it, yeah. People wanting unique, high-quality tastes. Beer tourism is a thing now. And especially younger drinkers, millennials, Gen Z, they often prefer local, artisanal products. Plus, digital marketing, online sales, it helps smaller players reach customers. And technology is still pushing things forward. The article mentions AI playing a role looking towards 2025.
AI in brewing.
Yeah.
Seriously, how does that work?
It's starting to move from concept to reality. Think AI suggesting new ingredient combos based on analyzing flavor data, or real-time monitoring of fermentation to optimize things, predicting when equipment needs maintenance, forecasting demand.
So practical application.
Yeah. The source mentions a couple of UK breweries, Intelligent X and St. Austell, already using AI-developed recipes. Apparently, it helps cut down R&D time and lets them tweak beers based on customer feedback faster.
Huh. AI as the brewer's new assistant.
Kind of. And beyond the tech, the types of beer are diversifying too. Lots of experimentation with super local ingredients, even using like upcycled food waste.
Upcycled food in beer.
Yeah, trying to be more sustainable. And then there's this whole trend of functional beers.
Functional beers, like good for you beer.
That's the pitch. Beers with probiotics for gut health, maybe added vitamins, adaptogens, tapping into that wellness trend, blurring the lines a bit.
Interesting. But maybe the biggest trend the article highlights is non-alcoholic beer.
Oh, it's absolutely exploding. The NA market is forecast to hit almost $35 billion by 2032. And get this, NA beer is apparently set to overtake traditional ale as the second biggest beer category by volume globally in 2025.
Wow. Second biggest. Bigger than ale. What is going on there?
It's a huge cultural shift. You hear terms like sober, curious, damp lifestyle, especially among younger generations, prioritizing moderation, health, wellness. They still want the taste, the ritual, but maybe not the alcohol all the time. And crucially, the beer itself is just better now.
Yep.
Way better.
How so?
Brewers are using much more advanced techniques. Vacuum distillation, arrested fermentation methods that remove the alcohol but keep more of the actual beer flavor and aroma, not just sad, watery stuff anymore.
So you can get genuinely good NA IPAs, stouts, sours?
Exactly. The quality leap has been massive, and it's meeting that cultural demand head-on.
Makes sense. And connecting to that health and maybe environmental consciousness, sustainability is becoming huge too.
Definitely. The article calls it a defining force for 2025. Breweries are looking at their whole footprint.
Like what specifically?
Water usage is a big one. Recycling wastewater, using less water in cleaning. Energy efficiency, solar panels, renewables, sourcing ingredients locally and organically to cut transport emissions and support local farms. The article gives the example of Allagash Brewery in the U.S. using about half the industry average for water, diverting nearly all waste from landfill and investing back into the community. It's becoming a benchmark.
And using the waste products too, spent grain.
Yeah, circular economy thinking, turning spent grains into animal feed, bread flour, even biogas. It's about minimizing waste and maximizing resource use. So what's fascinating is how all these modern trends, the tech, the health focus, the sustainability drive, they're not just niche things. They really reflect bigger changes in society and what consumers value now. It's pushing beer in some really exciting directions.
So let's step back, looking at this whole incredible journey. What's the big takeaway? Beer's impact on us.
It's just immense, from possibly nudging us towards agriculture and settled life,
Right back at the start.
to being money and food in ancient empires, preserving knowledge in monasteries, literally fueling the workforce during the Industrial Revolution, and now reflecting this globalized, tech-savvy, health-conscious, diverse world we live in. It's been right there alongside human progress. Every
Been a
step.
constant companion, always changing with us.
Absolutely. Always bringing people together, sparking new ideas, from that first accidental brew to AI helping design recipes today.
And the future, according to the source, looks like more of that. More diversity, innovation, responsibility.
That seems to be the trajectory. Things like hyper-personalized beers driven by AI, maybe. Functional beers becoming more common. That NA and low alcohol sector just continue its explosive growth. Some projections push the NA market even higher, maybe $35 billion plus by 2029, growing over 10% a year. Sustainability becoming just standard practice.
And more global cross-pollination of styles and ideas.
For sure. Expanding the whole beer map.
It's amazing. From that thick Sumerian porridge sipped through straws to the lagers, the IPAs, the sours, the high-quality NAs we have now, it really is a history of human ingenuity, community, change. It's quenched thirst, yes, but also shaped economies, cultures, civilization itself.
Well said. It makes you appreciate what's in your glass a bit more. We should definitely raise one to whatever comes next.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into beer's long and fascinating story. Hope you found some food, or maybe drink, for thought. The Urban Herald article leaves us with a great question, so we'll pass it on to you. What's your favorite chapter in the history of beer? Or maybe, next time you choose a beer, just take a second. Think about the thousands of years of history, invention, and human connection swirling in that glass.
Until next time.